Have you ever been to Turkey?
No, I have not.
It's like my favorite country.
Is it? That's
It is.
great. What was the alliance system like back then?
Well, the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers to form the Triple Alliance.
Woo! When did they formally enter World War I?
They entered World War I on October 28, 1914.
What caused them to enter it?
They bombed the Russian Black Sea ports. The Triple Entente declared war on the Ottoman Empire on November 4th.
Wow.
So the next topic we're going to be talking about is social. So there were four main social classes in the Ottoman Empire: the men of the sword, the men of the pen, men of husbandry, and men of negotiation. The top two classes were made up of all Muslims. Each class had important tasks to do in the empire. The men of the pen were highly educated and usually judges, doctors, or scientists. This was the highest class in the Ottoman Empire. The men of the sword were made up of soldiers in the military. The men of negotiation were the merchants and artisans. Last was the men of husbandry. They were farmers and animal herders. There were also groups called millets and janissaries.
Geographical changes in the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was founded in 1299 and expanded from Bursa, one of the earliest capitals. The Ottoman Empire gained more land after their victories in the 1300s, and this led to the period of great expansion, known as a peak for the empire's control over the other countries. The areas conquered included Turkey, Egypt, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula with North America. The Ottoman Empire originated in Turkey and expanded outward, taking over the surrounding countries in over 14 different European, Middle Eastern, and North African states. Their goal was to occupy other countries to acquire as much land as possible and achieve power. In the 1500s, during the Ottoman Empire's peak, the population of their empire was 35 million, with the world's population at 480 million. This meant that they would have controlled 7.3% of the world's population. The Ottoman Empire had a maximum area of 7.6 million square miles at this time. Today, Turkey's population is 74 million, and the world's population is approximately 7.2 billion. In comparison, it would give them control of only 1.3% of the world's population today. The decline of the Ottoman Empire occurred after several military defeats, and in 1699 the empire started losing territory and power rapidly. The Russo-Turkish War and series of treaties caused the empire to lose its economic independence. In the 1800s, all the rebellions between the states caused the Ottoman Empire to lose its political and social instability. The empire kept spiraling downhill since they held such a widespread landmass. In times of war, it was difficult to defend. The Turkish nationalists continued to deteriorate the empire, and it was finally ended after World War I with the Treaty of Sivas.
What was the Ottoman Empire's economy like?
Alright, so first they drove the Greeks and Armenians out because they thought they had all the business techniques, but they had none. So the economy went bad. Okay?
What was the economy based on?
Agriculture was their big thing because they had a lot of farmland and it was kind of flat, so they had good crops and stuff like that.
How does the war affect the economy?
Well, the war affects the economy because when you're at war with a country, you need to supply the country, your home country, with firearms and weapons to fight the other country. But since the government has to pay for that, the economy gets bigger because the businesses that are supplying it are getting more money and raising jobs, so the job rate is higher.
Oh, higher.
Yeah.
Well, as you can see in these two photos, in 1913, the Ottoman Empire extended from the bottom of the Black Sea to the top of the Red Sea. Now, as you can see, in 1920, after the war, that changed and that it was no longer that big.
This is a picture of the sultans. The sultans were absolute dictators, however, they did not rule alone. They had a large group of ministers who advised them on economic, social, and political policies. They also had a Genasi governor who was in charge of military operations. He reported directly to the sultans. The sultans also created the millet system, a leader of every non-Sunni Muslim religion. The Sunnis were the largest of the religions in the Ottoman Empire, which meaning everyone who wasn't Sunni was either Christians or Greek Orthodox or Jews. And he just reported back to the sultans on everything from their religions. The government was absolute monarchy, meaning that the royal family ruled the country. How was it led in World War I? It was led by Sultan Muhammad IV. Sultan Muhammad IV, he played a huge part because the sultans ruled the empire for a very long period of time before. Muhammad IV was the one sultan who gave up his position of power to his grand advisor. And what did the Ottoman Empire get out of World War I? Before World War I, the Ottoman Empire looked like that. And after World War I, the Ottoman Empire ended up like that. So, in theory, the Ottoman Empire got nothing but the death of its empire. After they ruled Turkey and most of the Middle East for centuries, they made their worst choice ever by making their allies for war the losing countries in World War I, would be the Central Powers. And the fall of the Ottoman Empire, circumstances surrounding the fall of the Ottoman Empire was a result of tensions between the empire's different ethnic groups and their government refusing to do anything about their tensions. To save the empire, they tried to introduce new laws on religions, but this proved to be a failure because there was too much nationalism in the country by that time.
What is economy? The wealth and resources of a country or region in terms of the production and consumption of goods and services. Changes in the economy before the war. The Turkish nationalists took control before the war began. They drove the Germans out and replaced them with Turkish people who had no skill. The Turkish people had no skill because of the lack of business in the past. The economy declined. The economy during the war. The economy during the war was very good because the war was not in the Ottoman Empire, so they did not have to spend money from the government to build things back up. But they had to supply their own country with firearms, bombs, and weapons. In order to have a successful business, you must have sufficient workers by employing the community. After the war. After the war, the Ottoman Empire collapsed because of World War I. Also, between all of the fighting in the war, the Ottoman Empire lost most of its European territories. That is the economy of the Ottoman Empire between the years of 1912 and 1919.